Well, I've reached the western end of Asia Minor, present-day Turkey, and I'm among the ruins of an ancient city called Ephesus, and it boasts some of the most extensive Roman ruins you can see in the entire world. Let's go take a look at some.
Ephesus was perhaps the most important city in Asia Minor. Not only was it an endpoint for the Royal Road that we looked at in the Smyrna episode of Drive Through History, but it was a powerful and influential port city on the coast of the Aegean Sea. Its history mirrors that of many other cities in Eastern Asia Minor. Founded as an ancient Greek settlement, came under Persian rule, conquered by Alexander the Great, traded hands a few more times, until it underwent massive city improvements when the Romans finally took over. By the time of the Roman Republic, Ephesus was firmly established as the capital of Asia Minor. And for me, walking around its ruins, it was impossible to miss how great this city was at one time. And even though it's halfway around the world, the city had features and a layout that made me feel right at home.
Now take this city gate, for instance. Now in America, you're not going to see anything like this except at maybe a Las Vegas hotel. But the street that came through here met with other streets of the ancient city here at Ephesus and provided a grid, a patchwork, upon which many of our modern cities are developed today. Now, instead of letting the street just sort of wander to where the shops and the houses were already built, the Romans devised a system of putting two main boulevards at a 90-degree angle and cut the side streets off of those, creating that city grid. Now, that seems pretty basic to us, but back in the day, it was pretty genius civil engineering, and it made travel to places the Ephesians wanted to go pretty easy. Places like the theater. The Greeks and Romans both put a huge priority on public entertainment. Now, when the Greeks began writing plays, they originally started out as small-scale private events. But by the time ancient Ephesus reached full bloom under the Roman Empire, people liked their entertainment big.
The Ephesian amphitheater was once the largest in the world, which is no surprise because entertainment was such a regular part of the Romans, and specifically the Ephesians' lives. Now, there's no PA system needed here. Not only are the acoustics already incredible, but at one time, the breeze from the bay, which used to lay just to the west of the theater, would help carry the sound all the way up to the cheap seats. But it wasn't exactly Shakespeare they were enjoying. Wild beast fights, often involving humans, also took place here.
Now, believe it or not, this gargantuan Ephesian amphitheater seats more than 24,000 people. Now, that's bigger than most American NHL hockey stadiums. Now transfer all the noise and excitement of a crowd watching a Stanley Cup playoff game to an Ephesian crowd watching the Gladiators or a Greek play or even a public trial. It was the ultimate in entertainment. But for those Ephesians who wanted to work out their bodies and not just sit and watch a play, Ephesus offered the gymnasium. Now this old field, which was once the gymnasium right next to the ancient Ephesian amphitheater, is now nothing more than just a storage place for a bunch of chunks of Ephesian debris. But at one time, this was the destination spot for many a Roman gentleman who wanted to get his body pampered, worked out, massaged, and bathed in his choice of hot, cold, or tepid baths. Today, we add a little motion to the water and call it a whirlpool, but the effect is still the same.
Now, the Romans weren't the first to sculpt their bodies into chiseled masses of muscle, but they definitely took the idea of workouts to new heights. Or should I say weights? Most Roman cities had a gymnasium of some sort. Some were big, like the one we saw in Sardis, but others were more modest. Nearly all of them had an adjacent bathing facility, which often had a warm room, a tepidarium, and a cold room, a frigidarium, for the purposes of bathing after exercise. But what would the exercise consist of? Workouts haven't changed much over the millennia. They were into weightlifting, wrestling, running, swimming, and ball playing.
So this is where you needed to go if you wanted to get your body worked out and looking its best. And speaking of needing to go, now when's the last time you used a public restroom made entirely of marble? Now we take for granted the availability of public facilities in America, but we probably have the ancient Romans to thank for that one. Everything from underground sewage systems underneath a lot of Ephesian homes to constantly running water underneath these public privies for perpetual flushing. Even this channel of cold, fresh water right here in front of your feet that people used to wash themselves with when they were done.
This particular facility featured 12 seats along each wall, so it could accommodate up to 36 people at one time. Which is probably why this thing was open air, if you catch my drift.
Now, this public facility had an open-air section for ventilation. They also had an outside water fountain to wash your hands with, even a man standing there sometimes with towels or optional perfumes. I mean, if you were an ancient Roman, you had everything you wanted out of a public facility, except maybe privacy.
Having such a lack of privacy would have made me, well, flushed, so to speak. But we can be thankful that the Romans invented a proper way of the disposal of human waste. They didn't know it at the time, but their engineering helped prevent widespread outbreaks of diseases such as cholera and typhoid. It is generally agreed that the reduction of disease by the development of sewage systems and plumbing has been a major accomplishment in human civilization. And for people like me with so-called germ, quote, issues, shall we say, it's what makes life itself bearable on this planet. Not to overstate it or anything.